Yeah, coming through.
It's coming through now.
Speed.
Testing.
Yeah.
It's not coming through the mic, but it will do.
You can hear the back. You can hear it in the mic.
Thank you. All right, sorry about that, everyone. So technically, there's a bit of a delay to the start, but let's make it start. Welcome to the Audit Committee. Before we start, I just wanted to welcome a new member of the committee this evening who's joining us online. This is Sandy Vig, part of our Continual Improvements Committee. We've agreed to take on the recommendation from SIPA that we should have 2 independent members. So really pleased to welcome Sandy with us this evening. Sandy comes to us with a wealth of experience and skills, and we're very grateful to him for joining us. So welcome to you, Sandy, this evening.
Thank you.
So in the room, just for your benefit, in the room we've got 6 councillors, we've got our other independent member who's Mike Drake. Andrew, I don't think you could do your usual round of introductions from the officer side, please.
Sure, Chair. Online we've got Graham Cadle, Assistant Director of Finance, Mark Thompson, Head of Finance. We've got Janet Dawson, Partner from our external auditors, EY. And I think that's all we've got online, and just the officers. To my left, Susan Parsonage, Chief Executive. To my right, Paul Ocean Ellis, who's our Governance and Risk Manager, and Catherine Hickman, who is our Head of Internal Audit and Investigations, and then colleagues from Democratic Services, Madeline Chopper and Lucy Bowker.
Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies?
No apologies, Councillor Davies is hopefully joining in house.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item is the minutes of the previous meeting. Are we happy that those are a correct record? Can see a show of hands. Thank you very much. We also had the actions list that was circulated to members, so thank you, officers, for doing that. Any matters arising from the minutes or the actions list? No? Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to check on the member skills audit report. Have we had everyone's background in terms of that, or still waiting?
No, there's a couple still outstanding.
All right, we'll chase those ones up, thank you. Okay, any declarations of interest? Okay. Any public questions? No, and we did have a member question, but unfortunately I think Councillor Cowan is unable to join us, so he will receive a written answer to his member question. Okay, so the first substantive item we have on the agenda this evening is the 2021 Auditor's Annual Report. So just a reminder, the annual report has been signed off. So this is a look back at the work that was done. So Janet, are you introducing this item, I assume?
I am. I'm hoping that you can see me. Oh, no, there we go. Good evening, everybody. Yes, thank you very much. So this is the annual report from the auditors, which refers to the audit for the 2021 period. And as the Chair has already explained, it's a summary of all of the work that we did and that was completed just over the summer. So I'm hoping that members of the committee will be quite up to speed and familiar with all the points that are summarised in here. What I would bring your attention to is that in Appendix A, for the first time, this is where you'll see a summary of our assessment of the BFM arrangements that have been in place against the criteria and sub-criteria against which we're required to test the organisation. So that sets out in much more detail than you've perhaps had in the past what the arrangements have been in the organisation during the period of audit against those sub-criteria. And you'll note that we found no exceptions to report around those arrangements. We did make a couple of recommendations against one of the criteria, but not to the extent that we felt that you had significant weaknesses in your arrangements. Appendix B just brings together all the recommendations that we made across both the financial statements audit and the value for money work. And then Appendix C sets out for you in some detailed breakdown the proposed fees for that audit. So you'll see that it starts with the PSAA scale fee that they set, and then the other areas of work that we felt we needed to do and the associated fee. So that's the first time we've seen that breakdown. That goes to PSAA to then determine what they think is a fair fee for the work based on what we've submitted and any conversations they then have with officers. So I'll stop there. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Janet. Any questions from members? Okay, yeah, Stephen and then Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a few questions, I'm afraid. Do you want me to do them all or do one and two?
Yeah, I think do them all and then.
Okay. Firstly, regarding the Berkshire Pension Fund, I noticed that they've now done that and you've managed to complete, which is great. I just wanted to have some assurance that they are now on a better path to completing these more timely, so that we don't get so far behind as well on that in the future. Not anybody's fault with this council, hasten to add, but it does have an impact to our council. The other questions I've got really was on page 27. It says the council could improve its governance arrangements to oversee work with charities. I just wanted to understand whether you felt that had improved since. That was one question. If you look at page 29, there were some adjustments, and it talks about the council has accepted the improvements needed in these areas. This is the report to the Audit Committee. Again, I just wondered if you felt that that had been moved forward at all. And also it points out at the foot of that in the recommendations about information being retained for payments. Well, we hope that that was the case. So is that now in an adequate situation? And also it talks about putting service levels into contracts and one would hope that that was happening as well. There was a breach referred to on page 30. And I just wanted to understand again whether that you felt that that was now dealt with adequately and wouldn't reoccur. And then looking finally into the appendices, sorry, just bear with me a second. On page 39 it talks about clearly demonstrating a business case. This is about the procurement. We had a question recently at full council that I believe came from Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, or a challenge around business cases. This states that they should clearly demonstrated in a business case. So I just wanted to understand whether we are meeting that standard of normally having a business case, because what Councillor Jorgensen was suggesting was maybe we're not. I just want to understand what the reality was around that. I'm not trying to suggest that Pauline's wrong. I just wanted to understand whether we've now got that right. I also, in the final paragraph there, talks about the contract management learning and support group. Sounds like it's doing really good work. It's almost like an internal only document. I just wonder whether the circulation might be extended to include the audit committee, because there might be some stuff in there that would help us in what we're trying to do. And I think finally, if we see at page 40, where you've made a number of recommendations, and there was a council management response. I just want to understand whether you felt that the response was adequate, or whether actually there was still some things that were outstanding or risks applying from that. At that point, I will stop. So thank you very much for bearing with me.
Chair, are you happy for me to answer?
Please do, Janet, yeah, thanks.
Okay, so hopefully I've captured all of those. Pension fund are on a better path. That will be covered in this current audit. You'll see reference in our progress report that the pension fund auditors have said that they anticipate giving us assurance by the end of this calendar year. So that is quicker, hopefully more timely for our close out of the 21-22 audit. However, those are still delayed, and they are still delayed. So, and clearly, as you noted, it's not under the control of the council. It's also not under the control of us as the auditors. We are receiving those assurances from them, but we're hopeful, I think is all I can say at this point. But clearly we'll keep officers and the committee updated if there's any indication that they're not managing to meet the timetable that they've suggested. So you asked me about arrangements with charities, the areas of adjustments that we identified last time, and whether the point that we made about payments, information and service level agreements. Given that the audit is underway currently, we would pick up all of those areas as part of the work that's going on at the moment. So I'm not in a position actually to tell you that we've assessed that and the conclusion is X or Y at this point, but I think we need to get further through the audit to be able to give you the answers to that based on our experience in our testing of the audit. But management may have a view, officers may have a view as to whether they put the improvements in place. And that also refers to the responses on page 40. We were satisfied with the responses that we got from management, but management may have a view as to whether they feel that progress is being made in those areas. And then the other points were around the breach, business cases and contract management learning. Those were arrangements that we saw were in place and were operating. So I think if you want to know more about those, then again, I would refer back to officers to give you a gauge as to, how those are operating currently and your point about whether or not those could be shared more broadly. I hope that's okay.
Thank you, Janet. Do you want to come back on any of that, Stephen?
Well, I was also asking about SLAs in contracts and stuff, but also about the business case being made for the decisions, which is the challenge that was made in full council by Councillor Jorgensen. I just noted that it says it should be that, and she was suggesting it wasn't, so I just wanted to understand what the reality was around that. That may be one more for officers than for the auditors.
Okay, Janet, are you able to elaborate on that at all in terms of that point about the business case? Or...
So our reporting was that those were the arrangements in place. So if there's a suggestion that they're currently not operating, I think that is perhaps back to officers rather than for us, because we had identified those as controls that were operating at the time of 2021.
Okay, Graham, are you coming in on that?
If I may. So I think we believe that improvements have been made. I think it says elsewhere in the report, generally in the finance function, we've increased the resources, we're developing skills, financial skills, business skills across the organisation. I think it's important to note the timing. So this audit was obviously 2021. Janet and her team are now working on 21-22, so that's obviously some while back, but it's still being looked at even now. But I think we would expect EY to be finding improvements already in 21-22 and by 22-23, 23-24, that good arrangements in place. I know particularly around business cases, not only the improvements have been made, but we're also looking at further developing the format of business cases so that the information we believe we have is shown more clearly for members and to the public so that people can see transparency around those decision making.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Okay, Mike.
Thank you. Page 24 and 25 in our pack of your report sets out, if you like, quite starkly actually the material adjustments that were made in the 21 accounts. It's really, my first question is really one for the auditors, that these, I think you summarised 5 or 6 different adjustments that had to be made. Are similar adjustments being reflected in the 22 and 23 accounts? Because obviously it had an impact not only on the delay of the accounts, but also on the audit fee overrun. So that's the first question. And then really small one, on the value for money audit section on page 33, we talk about, we've looked at the capital investment strategy, work done in the town centre and the income flow. And I just wanted to find out whether your work also includes the cost side. I assume a lot of the borrowings we did on that may have been fixed rate, now coming off fixed rate and now be a higher variable rate, whether that forms part of your value for money work. So I suppose the first question was for Graham, and the second question was for the auditors.
Okay, thank you. So we believe while there was adjustments found, they didn't have a significant effect on the bottom line. So whilst there was adjustments rightly that they were categorised on the changes made, they didn't affect our overall position. We do not believe, therefore, that there will be an ongoing impact and further work to do in future years. As I say, we're still working a year behind, but for instance on valuations, we've made efforts using external valuers and working with EY to make sure that's a bit more clear cut and transparent, and we both agree how it works. So I wouldn't expect that to have an ongoing impact.
So if I come in on the second question around assessment of costs and borrowings, so we would look at that where we're looking at a particular scheme and understand how information has been used, presented, analysed to support any decision made by the council. But then to your point about the term of any borrowings and how the financing and refinancing takes place, we would look at that more at council level and understand the overall impact of that on your medium-term financial strategy and your financial sustainability within our VFM arrangements work. So we don't look at the value for money of particular projects, we look at it at more of a macro scale.
Is that appropriate? Because if you're assessing the particular financial performance of a project for value for money purposes, surely you should be looking at how much that project is making profit-wise, and the cost is a major issue.
So there's a distinction between whether we opine on whether the council is achieving value for money, which is what I think your assessment of us looking at particular projects would derive, or whether we look at the arrangements in place to make sure that you're making appropriate decisions to achieve value for money. So we don't opine on whether you have achieved value for money, we look at the arrangements in place that you have across the council that are designed to achieve value for money. So it's a bit of a subtle difference. If we had a particular concern around a particular project and we felt that governance or decision making or use of information was flawed and it could lead to a significant weakness within the organisation, then we may look at the cost, the overruns, the management of that project. But it would have to be a specific issue that could lead to a significant weakness for the council, a reputational loss, a significant financial loss. We wouldn't normally look across individual projects in that way.
I guess it is as it is.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to pick up one question on fees, and I can see there's some other questions coming in. On the fees, particularly the Appendix C, the scale fee variation in particular, how do PSA validate those additional costs? Because some of them look really reasonable, so that checking the audit adjustments, for example. The rest of them are kind of mixtures. We've got some national issues in there, the infrastructure assets. We've got things that are just outside of our control, that pension delays, so that's Stephen mentioned just a moment ago. We've got some technical items in there, so we've got Elmsfield and Landmark Square. I would have thought that the technical part was within your normal remit. And then we've got sort of general delays that we're sort of picking up the tab for potentially. So how do the fees get reviewed and validated? Because we should be getting some assurance, I think, that these are fair, because essentially the taxpayer is picking up this bill. So if you could elaborate a bit, that would be reasonable.
Sure, happy to do that. So we are required to set out fees, the work that we have done, the hours that has taken, and PSA has set rates for the different levels of audit team who are involved in those. They and they alone have that across every audit that is covered by their PSA contract. So they don't expect us, in fact they ask us not to share that level of detail with audited bodies, because they are responsible for doing that comparison. They then look across all different organisations by type. They look at the work that's been done across issues, so similarities and differences for unitary councils, where the areas of focus are, what the risks have been, where the additional effort has gone in, and they then do a benchmarking exercise. They also talk to the authority officers to get their perspective on where they think the work has been focused, whether that's been too much, too little, what their view is on duplication, wasted effort, whatever. And then they also look at how we've reported that out to you. So does our reporting support, an area where we say we've had to do additional technical work, involved specialists, had difficulties getting to the level of assurance we needed, and they then will determine the fee based on that information. So it is quite a long and laborious process.
Okay, thank you very much. Sam is next.
Thank you, Chair. My question was in regards to page 29, which is at the 11 of the report. If you look at the fourth paragraph, which talks around the whistleblowing allegation in October 2022. It mentions that upon receiving this, there was the level of evidence supporting highlighted in the whistleblower allegation was relatively limited. So it sort of suggests that there was some evidence in that phrasing. And then sort of later on, if I read it, it actually says the council is unable to provide an overarching agreement between it and the related party to clarify what level of service was expected for the funding by the payments made, and has left the council open to challenge. So I'm just keen to understand a bit more around that, and around what sort of level of risk or exposure the council has to this, and what has been done to sort of make changes to stop this potentially happening again.
So if I may start, now you may or may not be aware that I wasn't involved in the audit for last year, so Helen and Hannah, who unfortunately aren't here, would probably be able to give you more of the background in the detail that you're seeking. I also am somewhat, by reading the way in which we presented this, I surmise that we have written it carefully because of the data protection requirements. So there's probably a limit as to how far I can go in terms of discussing that in a public meeting. In terms of improvements, I think probably officers might be in a position to respond in terms of what improvements or strengthening of controls has taken place in response to the issue that we've raised there, that you were left open to challenge in terms of record keeping. I'm sorry not to be more helpful on that, but I'm just being a little cautious.
Okay, Andrew, would you help us with this one?
Just very briefly, Chair, just to add to that. So the two recommendations that you see on the recommendations page relate to this particular anonymous whistleblower. What I would say from my perspective, obviously this is an officer perspective, that officers have put in place now the appropriate controls, both in terms of service level agreements with the voluntary sector partners that we work with, and strengthening the internal controls, which is the other recommendation in there. So I think, not to underplay this, that this was one anonymous whistleblowing event, and certainly from my perspective, I'm satisfied that we've acted appropriately and strengthened controls as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Peter?
Thank you. Just picking up on page 25, cash and cash equivalents. That's the second paragraph I was concerned about, talking about the unexplained differences between accounting records and statements, presumably from banks and other organisations, of £260,000, which I know is below your reporting threshold, but it's still a large number to me. So, what's the significance of that? Are we not tracking payments, receipts properly?
So from our perspective, one of the key controls within any organisation is bank reconciliations, and therefore to have a difference on the bank reconciliation that is unexplained suggests that something somewhere in the records, the controls aren't working effectively to minimise or eliminate those differences. Now, we will have satisfied ourselves that it's not hiding something more significant, and that's a net position, because otherwise we could have been left with a material issue within our audit approach. But it is, because it's to do with bank, and bank is such a fundamental control, that's why we brought it to the attention of the Audit Committee, even though it's below our reporting threshold. So again, my suggestion is that the officers might be in a better position to tell you what they've done as a result of that finding to strengthen controls.
Okay, if I could just come in as well, in terms of the 28 million, I think the difference between cash and cash equivalents, and cash is sort of the bank, bank balances, and then like money markets and short-term investments or fees for 90-day deposits or something. So they're not actually that different. I wouldn't have thought. So it's classification between those two. So, but it's the second part.
It's the second part,
yeah,
which is,
yeah.
even I affect on my bank account.
Yeah.
And I'm not penny out, so I'm surprised that it's £260,000 up with teams of people who do it. So that's great. It must be.
I will try. Thank you, Chair. So, obviously, again, I'm going to go back to the timing. And at the timing of this work, at that year, there was some delays. There was a number of pressures in terms of resourcing in the team, etc. They are now up to date. They are carried out regularly, and there are no discrepancies. So, yes, it was a point in time in that audit, but it's not a current risk been resolved since.
Thank you. Other questions? Stephen and then Mike.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on the point that Mike identified earlier. I was assuming, and there was a phrase about never assume about things. I won't go into that so much. But my point is, when you talk about value for money statements, I was thinking that we would naturally be looking at that in the decision-making end and during the lifetime of it as well. And from what I was hearing earlier, it seemed like the audit is only of the decision-making, not that it continues to deliver value for money as expected throughout the life. And I just wanted to try and check that that understanding was correct. And if it is correct, what processes are there in place to ensure that during the lifetime of a contract or an investment decision, one thinks particularly, there was a warning today about empty property in London, empty office and so on, where we might make a decision in good faith, we do something and then events happen, it could suddenly change it. Do we ever review that? Who's responsible for reviewing that? Who then looks at it and says, well, actually, we need to do something different? Or is it just left because that's just life and nobody bothers? I don't know.
Okay, Janet, can you clarify on the point, the first part of the point, and then perhaps Graham could come in on the second part?
Sure, no problem. So, the value for money arrangements work is risk-based. So, to your point, we do look at contracts or decisions to enter arrangements or contracts, but we also then look at the risks to the organisation on an ongoing basis. So if there's a contract that you'd entered into 5 years ago, which now we would be understanding that in the round of your business as usual to say, is that being monitored? Is that being risk assessed? How is that being reported? How is information being used to manage that as part of your overall business? But our work on value for money is absolutely risk-based. So we're looking across the organisation as a whole and then dropping down to understand where the risks to your organisation are, and then we may drill down in more detail. So back to my point, we wouldn't be looking at individual contracts or arrangements that you have in place unless we identify that they may give rise to a risk to the organisation.
Graham, did you want to add anything on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So to add into that, in terms of what we do as an organisation and as an officer group, we obviously have the original business case which will set out the investment, the level of interest we believe we'll be paying over the period and the returns, and we will monitor that internally. We don't borrow for particular investments, so we borrow against our overall cash flow. So we will reflect changes in overall interest as loans mature and we take out new loans. There is then a number of other areas where that would get picked up and monitored. So there will obviously be a revenue impact in terms of the income, the cost of interest, etc. that we'll pick up generally through our revenue monitoring reports and obviously capital monitoring reports while the project is ongoing. We report as part of our treasury strategy, our investment portfolio is performing and the return on those. So there's a number of indicators and ways in which once it's started and got through that initial approval, it's checked to make sure both individually it's working and, as Janet said, as part of our overall council's financial position and portfolio, it's still sustainable, and I guess in light of what's happened in other councils, balanced against our overall risks and level of debt, etc.
Okay, thank you very much, and Mike.
Thank you, Chair. It's a good report, interesting to read, etc., lots of interesting information. One of the difficulties I was having, and you might be a bit pedantic, is the use of the word the council. So halfway down page 28, it says the council agreed a balanced budget at their council, that council in February 2022, which is fine. That was the elected representatives voting, or debating and then voting to accept the budget. If I look at then page 29, it says during 2021, the council set up a risk champions group. I don't think that was the councillors setting it up, it was the officers. I'm trying to understand where the word the council is referring effectively to the elected body and where it's talking about officers. And I find it a bit confusing throughout the report. Maybe it's me just being a bit pedantic.
Right, I don't know who wants to have about that one. Andrew?
I'll have a go at it. But yeah, I take the point, Mike, and sometimes we do use the term council sort of quite generically. What I would say is that particular reference to the Risk Champions Group is part of the risk management policy and guidance. It's referenced in that, and that document did come through the Audit Committee at the time before it went on to the executive. So this committee, which is effectively a subcommittee of the council, did have some oversight and involvement in terms of the setting up of that group.
Okay, thank you.
May I just come back?
Yeah.
I mean, somebody said it's not your report, it's the external auditor's report. And I would just like a bit more clarity where the two things stand, because there's a contract management learning and support group, apparently, called page 39, the chair of which reports regularly to the strategic procurement board. I don't think the audit committee sees any of that. And that's about learning about contracts. And my understanding is that each department does its own procurement, there's no central procurement. And I'd be quite interested to know what the lessons are that are learned and how the best practice can be got at. And if they're on the council SharePoint site, then no councillors can see that, or at least no backlog.
Okay, so perhaps just some feedback there in terms of use of terminology and being totally clear as to who we are actually talking about. So.
Yeah, I'm taking, well, I'll take that one away. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and last question for Stephen, then we'll move on to you.
Yeah, sorry, it's not a question, but just to point out, the point Mike made about the report was what I did include in my questions was could that also come to this committee? Just so we don't lose that in there. Myriad of things I asked about was could that report come to this committee as well?
Sorry, which report was that? So,
The one that goes to the strategic, the
Contract management learning and support group.
Yeah. So I'm getting at the moment, it's an internal learning document for officers.
okay. Yeah, of course.
Just on that, I think that it might be preferable if the chair of the board comes to talk about how it works, because it's an internal group, as you say, it's often an office group in terms of the contract. So it's about having the board itself is about having a corporate approach to our contracts, corporate oversight of all of the contracts that are in place and the contracts that are on the horizon, and ensuring that we've got a strong corporate approach to that. We have got procurement, which is obviously a team for the council as well, which works right across the council. And I think that if the chair of the board then takes you through how the process works, how the type of contracts that we look at, and some of the learning that comes out of it, maybe that might be a way to actually convey what you're looking for. Would that help?
Thank you, I'm happy to start with that certainly, so thank you.
Because I think that what I would say is that if you're looking for formal reports all the time, it's not going to have formal reports all the time, because it's a working, it's a where officers come together and work through different projects. So there won't be there will be notes, I'm sure, but that there are not necessarily going to be formal reports in the way that you've seen today all the time, because actually what we need is the group to get on and do what it needs to do.
Oh, sure, yeah, go ahead, Greg.
So just to add to what Susan said, it's quite an operational group, and often what that operational group is doing is working things through that then come through subsequently the committee process. So both in terms of developing skills in the organisation and also shaping particular procurements that are then coming through and often ending up through the committee process. So as Susan suggests, I think if we explain how that works for you, I'm not convinced that the paperwork out the back will give you much. It's quite operational and more individual to what's being supported in specific services.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next item, thank you, which is a very brief update on the 21-22 audit. So over to Janet, please.
Thanks, Chair. So I'll take the report as read. It just sets out the progress that we've been making on the 21-22 financial statements audit and our expected timeline, which we've agreed with officers, have resources in place and will be working through with a view that we would be ready to complete the audit this side of Christmas. We are dependent again, unfortunately, on that pension fund issue, but as I said earlier, we are anticipating receiving the assurances we need before the end of the year from the pension fund auditors. Once we've completed that audit, we will then turn our attention to the 22-23 audit, subject to any further announcements from the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities about the future requirements for audits across the local government system. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from members on this update? No? All right, thank you very much, Janet. Okay,
Thank
so
you, Chair.
we'll move on to the next item, which is the 23-24 internal audit, quarter one progress report. Appreciate it's quite early in the year for this, so it's not a huge amount to report, but over to Catherine to introduce this one.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. This is the first of two reports that come into Audit Committee this evening, and it's the summary of audit activity in the first 3 months of the financial year. If I can refer you to Appendix A1, which is on pages 71 to 73 in the agenda pack, this lists all the audits as planned for the year and the status as at the end of June. As the chairs have just mentioned, we are at the early stages of the year, so there's a lot of audits that are work in progress at the moment. On page 61 of the pack, this lists the key corporate risks that will be audited this financial year, and this links into the corporate risk register report that you'll receive later on. This is to demonstrate that internal audit are focusing activity on the key risks to the organisation. There are no audits where management responses are outstanding, and through the course of our work, where we've identified high-risk concerns, we undertake regular follow-up activity of those concerns when timescales are due for implementation. We keep an audit tracker, and I share that with the chair of the Audit Committee on a regular basis. And I've included in the pack on pages 64 to 66 a summary of those high-risk concerns, just to give you an overview of what they actually are. During the period, there was just one audit that fell into the lowest category of audit opinion, and that was in terms of the right to buy scheme, and I've shared the report with the chair of the Audit Committee. The report also mentions about fraud activity during the quarter, and also about our compliance with the public sector internal audit standards, but my second report goes into a little bit more detail on our external assessments against those standards. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions from members on the quarter one report?
There seem to be a lot of points to be closed out by the 30th of September. It's 2 days time.
Okay, any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Oh, sorry, yeah, Mike?
I'm just trying to find it in the paper.
Yeah.
Halfway down
Mike.
page 64.
Mike.
Halfway down page 64 on the debtors, It says the council needs to consider further innovation in its methods of receiving income, which is to be completed by Julia Clark. I was just wondering what was being done to be more innovative in collecting money.
That might be something for Graham, because obviously we haven't reached the target date yet, so we haven't done any follow-up activity of that action yet. So I don't know, Graham, is that anything you'd like to respond to?
Yeah, I can share. So it's various things we're looking at, both from our own internal operations, right through to how we interact with our customers or those that owe us money. Innovation is quite an interesting word to use. So it ranges from using different collection techniques, so collection agencies for certain types of debt, to changing where we ask for payment, so asking for payment up front in more occasions, right through to the approach internally of automating some of the work and how we raise the debts quicker, and different electronic payment mechanisms. So I wouldn't say it's groundbreaking innovation, but it's looking at a whole host of things that are used throughout the sector to get money. It's quite well advanced. I don't think it's something that will be finished in the next few days, but it's something we can show we've made really good progress and will continue to move forward. This obviously we collect debt for a number of different services, so we're kind of working through each one and looking at what we can put in place in each.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Mike?
On the recent completed audit, the right to buy scheme, we had one concern that's been followed up, high risk concern, but there were 22 other points raised, and that seemed quite a lot to me in one single audit. I don't know if that's fairly typical, or is this unusual and there are issues there that maybe it's not been reported to the chair of the audit committee. Perhaps you can insight of how many findings normally produced and whether there is an issue.
Okay. So there are a number of medium risk concerns. They all filter into this high risk concern, so it's all about setting the policy, just to make sure we've got governance in place and we're complying with legislation. So they all sort of filter from that. So that's why there's quite a number, because we're sort of breaking it down to spell out exactly what needs to be done to address that high risk concern.
And would that be typical of other audits you do as well, with that many points being
It would
addressed
vary,
and then
yeah.
filtering into
It would vary. I mean, we have to sort of sit back and do an overall assessment, you know, in terms of how many high risk concerns, how many medium. It's that balance, you know, that how you feel the overall opinion is.
But we don't have a particular issue here, is what you're concluding, isn't it?
As long as we address the issue about the policy and get something put in place, and all those other concerns should all automatically fall into place as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Halfway or toward the top of page 68 under whistleblowing, it says there were 4 whistleblowing cases received by the service up to date, which 3 have been resolved. I don't understand what resolved means. Does that mean were they dismissed or were they upheld? Resolved is a term, if you don't mind saying so.
I'll need to go back to the information. I can tell you exactly what the outcomes were, if that would be helpful.
Well, it'd be nice to know if the whistleblowing system is working as intended. To say it's resolved, you can say, no, maybe the whistleblower withdrew their accusation, or it was resolved by investigating and it was found to be a problem. I don't want to know the outcome, but we'd like to know how successful our whistleblowing policy is being in the future.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Just to add to the point. Just to add to that point, so the whistleblowing policy is something that we review quite regularly. In fact, it will be coming back shortly to this committee, so it's an opportunity to have a look at it in a bit more detail. One of the things that we do find, that I speak as the receiving officer of whistleblowing complaints, is that a lot of complaints that come in through that whistleblowing hotline are actually service complaints. So there can quite often be very minor things that get dealt with as a service complaint, as opposed to a more serious allegation of fraud or irregularity which you might associate with a whistleblowing complaint. But it's an opportunity, as I say, when this comes to the committee for you to look at the policy in more detail.
I'll come back then. So I mean, that infers that these are not necessarily cases originating within council. It could be members of the public. Because I was accused, or rather on the doorstep the other day, member of the public claimed that he thought that the entire planning committee and all councillors were anal officers of corrupt. Did ask him to be made a complaint.
The short answer to the question is the public can use the whistleblowing process and do use the whistleblowing process. I couldn't really answer the point you made, the general point.
Okay, thank you. And Stephen, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow on from what was being said. Catherine, you said about this, going back to the previous topic, you said that this risk would be closed out, or something was that effect, if this policy was changed. This is about the right to buy. So my question is it, or are we still running the same risk? You may not know that, maybe for other officers to answer, but I'm assuming there needs to be a policy change, what you're saying, to remove that risk, if that was my understanding correctly.
It's not a policy change, we just need a policy. We don't have one at all at the moment, so that's what the issue is.
Okay, so the question is, are we getting a policy if one's been identified as needed?
We've got an action point for management, and they've got a target date for implementing the policy, so that's something we'll keep on track of. It's part of our follow-up work.
And because it's a high risk, you know, that's something that we'll be tracking carefully in terms of does it actually get done.
It sounds as if management have accepted the point.
They have accepted the point, they've accepted it very positively actually, and the target date is the end of March 24 to get that policy set up and approved.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike, again?
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate Catherine on the comments on the bottom of page 69, where the external review undertaken by CIFO was the highest performing review. Well done.
So with that, shall we move on to the next item, which is to do that report? I'm very pleased to see the report. So this is a process that I was also involved in, lots of officers were involved in senior management, etc. And obviously one of our roles is to get assurance and review the workings of internal audit, so this is a key piece of assurance for us as well as a committee. So Catherine, did you want to introduce this and say a bit more about it?
Thank you, Chair. So in July, CIFO did an external review of the internal audit service against the public sector internal audit standards. This is required to be undertaken every 5 years, and in the intermediary years we're required to undertake self-assessments against those standards. In addition, we undertook a review and a self-assessment against the CIFO statement on the role of the head of internal audit. Pleased to say, CIFO concluded that the internal audit service fully complies with the standards. There were no areas of non-compliance with the standards, no significant areas of partial non-compliance, there were no recommendations, and there were just 5 advisory suggestion points which we're taking on board and implementing. Going forward, obviously we want to maintain this highest category of conformance, so we will be reporting periodically back to the Audit Committee to confirm we've implemented those 5 advisory points and that we're keeping on top of everything. So really overall this has been really positive for the team, because I know we've all worked very, very hard to achieve this good result, but also for the council, because it shows the positive contribution the internal audit service makes towards the council's governance framework. And additionally, CIFO guidance say that for an audit committee to be effective in its role, it needs to rely on a good quality internal audit service. So hopefully the outcome of this external assessment will give members reassurances in this respect. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you. And you can see how detailed the review was from the report, and to have no, formal recommendations and no areas of non-compliance is really impressive. So thanks from us to yourself, and congratulations to you, and please pass that on to the team on our behalf as well. That's really, really good result. Any other comments or questions?
It's limited actually. I don't know the form in these meetings, but we minute there. We're very pleased with Catherine's work. And
yes, we certainly can.
Very pleased with it. Thank you.
Anyone else want to make any comments?
I'm delighted what you said, Rick, because I want to echo that. I mean, I think where we are subject to this sort of external thing, to get that level of external accreditation is absolutely phenomenal, to be honest, because usually we'll try and find something, sort of find nothing and just very minor things. It really speaks volumes. So I think, as has been said, credit to you and the team, and a huge thanks, and well done on achieving that. That's an astonishing outcome.
I think what was also noticeable was the feedback from staff as well, actually. You know, it's not just that it's giving us assurance, and you know, some of the feedback in there from staff about how useful it is in their jobs, you know, that's really interesting as well. So thank you.
I think it's important to remember we're a very small team as well, so to achieve that, so we really, you know, do all the hard work of the team.
Cool, that's great. Thank you very much, Catherine. Okay, the next item is the corporate risk register. So you can see some changes have been made to the format since our last meeting as a result of our feedback. So thank you to the officers for putting those through.
Yes.
Very pleased to have Susan Parsonage with us this evening, particularly to talk about this item. Who is going to introduce this item on the officer side?
I think I'll introduce it. Thanks very much, Chair. So in terms of the report itself, as you can see, we've highlighted the top 4 corporate risks. So you will not be surprised that the budget and financial resilience remains as being one of the top risks, along with SEND, adult social care and cyber security. We've made some changes to the register, aside from the recommendations that you've made in terms of how it should look and some of the further information that you want. We've made some changes to the risks themselves, one of those which relates to the elections and another which relates to support for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. So, and 2 risks have been removed, the health and social care reform risk and the website replacement risk. I think that we may want to talk a little bit more about the election risk in a moment, because Andrew can talk about that further. And the actual support for unaccompanied asylum seekers, as it says here, the funding, we've got a particular risk there, because what we have is there's a national transfer scheme where we have to accept equivalent to 0.1% of our under 18 population. And what that means is that we need to accept 41, if I make that as a number, it's 41 unaccompanied asylum seekers, children. So, and that we are at that number now, so we accept the number that we should accept. And what that does is that it places a huge burden on our social care and services, as it says here, a disproportionate burden. And we don't actually have enough foster carers to actually respond to it appropriately in terms of the cultural needs that some of the children have. And we are seeking to address that, and maybe I can go onto the page itself. If I go onto the page the page number for you, this was number 22, so which talks a little. I might as well go to that now. And that talks in a little bit of detail about this. So what we have, so we have this. So we've got the number at 41, and what actually happens is that when a child, when a young person reaches 18, they become a care leaver, and that then means that we need to take another, as one leaver becomes a care leaver, that we then have to take another unaccompanied asylum seeker child. And where the pressure comes in this particular area is that not only a bit of responding to the cultural aspects and the cultural needs that the children and young people have, it's a financial pressure. So, for example, when the children and young people are under 18, we receive £1,000 a week from the government. When they are over 18, we receive £270 a week. So there's a big difference, yet we have responsibilities for care leavers. We're a corporate parent. So what we need to do, and we have a workshop tomorrow to look at this, is really address the accommodation side of things, the accommodation needs, because obviously there's a big reduction in funding that we receive, but there's a need there. So a number of services are coming together to really look at how we actually can bring forward accommodation for the over 18s. Just to say that the portfolio holder, Prue Bray, has written for a second time to the Home Office, raising that we need to be appropriately paid for this to properly meet the needs of the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. And something that happened last night, there was a virtual school meeting, I think last night, which really looked into detail about the different needs that the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children have. Those 41 have. It's about understanding the cultural heritage, for example, and what those needs are. So what it means is that because we don't have the foster carers, and the number of foster carers that can meet the needs of the children, we have placements that are outside the borough. So we have children and people that are, for example, placed in London, or for example, in Dudley. And it's about how we get foster carers that can meet those needs. So we're doing a real drive around foster carers to help meet those needs. I think that's probably as much as I want to say on that. So, but it's a significant financial pressure, because placements are in the same way that we've probably come here and said to you that placements for adults, vulnerable adults, are expensive. Placements for children and young people are expensive as well. So it's really about how we can seek to address that.
Okay, thank you, Susan, for that introduction. Questions? Stephen?
Sorry, Chair, it's not a question, but as the Chief Executive's highlighted risk 22, I thought I probably should record a declaration of interest as I am working in Borough Council foster care along with my wife. So I'm part of that risk corps, however you want to see it in that way. Can I come on to some questions as well, if that's okay? Having done that, I didn't realise we were going to focus on that specifically, so I didn't declare it at the start of the meeting, which is lost in the midst of things. So thank you first of all for this updated risk register. One thing I did want to just draw attention to was I think that last time we looked at this, we did ask if there could be arrows added, which might give a direction of travel between the target and the risk as to where it is, to show whether it's sort of getting nearer or moving further away. I just wondered if that could be revisited, please. The other thing I just wanted to ask as a general matter, I'm really pleased to see that a lot of these risks we're seeing the mitigations are on track. There's quite a number of them from the pack, and you can see that. So well done for that. I just wanted to understand where we're seeing that when we get to the last date of an action with those mitigations, is it your expectation then that the actual risk placement in the grid and the target would actually be correlating, so that we are then actually at the point where the target and the risk are matched up? Or are we still looking at these things that are beyond our control, or further mitigations, further actions might be needed? Did that question make sense?
I might have to answer that, and Andrew might want to go. Oh, right, okay, then go on, then you go.
The short answer is yes, but there will be cases where we aren't able to mitigate that gap. I think what your question has prompted me to think about is how do we reflect that to the committee. I think the last time we spoke around when Helen presented on the same risk with 5 to my head, we've modified that to show the key milestones in that 6-year programme to try and keep that true. So in terms of that risk, I can say we definitely know that because we've done that additional piece of work. In November, we'll bring that to you and be able to show you where the mitigating actions that we have planned aren't going to get us to that target risk, and where that misalignment between where we want to be versus where we are will continue beyond those mitigating actions. It's very good.
Thank you, that's really helpful. I mean, you actually hit the nail on the head there in terms of what I'm looking for. I think we all are, this is our assurance that the officers are doing a really brilliant job. And that's all I'm looking to get here. I'm not trying to throw criticism, I'm just wanting that assurance that we can see the officers are understanding it, they're recognising the challenges. If there are things that are beyond their control and beyond the council control, let's call them out, let's understand them. But this to me is a matter of evidencing that the officers are doing fantastically well. And that's what I'm looking for here. So anything that, and it's not a matter of blame if something isn't going right, because things do happen, circumstances. It's then a question of being realistic, as you're saying there, and saying we thought this was going to achieve it, it's not, and we're now re-looking at it, and there's a more serious issue, or we're going to try this and see if that does it. It's that sort of a journey that I think this is what we're trying to find here. So really, thank you for what you're doing on this, and all the people involved, because these are significant risks that we're trying to manage, and in difficult circumstances, more so than probably many previous years. So I just want to recognise the work that's going on and what you're doing to bring this to our attention and identify this. So thank you.
I've got two questions, if I may. Please, on item 2.5, under a general heading of spotlight and core risk on page 100, it says all local authorities face the risk of fraud, working approach to utilise the CIFA fighting fraud and corruption, locally strategy that identifies key fraud and corruption risks, and there's a list of them. The one that's missing there, surely, is planning. People stand and make huge sums of money out of planning decisions that got nothing, not council officers or councillors, but developers and the like. And it's all down to decisions made by council, both officers. So I'm really surprised not to find planning as one of the key risks in terms of corruption and fraud. So,
Yeah, we'll take that away. And Mike, I think that is just a straight lift, that lift from that document which you referred to there. But I think it's particularly from a corruption perspective, it's a fair call that has historically in some councils been issues in that area.
no, I'm not for a minute suggesting there's any war going on, but I'm just completely gobsmacked that it's not there. This is one area that people make huge sums of money outside on in terms of profits on development or whatever. And my second question was about was on the state cybersecurity. The particular risk is concerned with ransomware, ending up with disclosure of personal sensitive information, etc. But to my mind, there are lots of other risks that are related to cybersecurity. And in particular, where it says mitigating actions, on the bottom of the right-hand side, it says continuing with PSN until dates from GDS. I have no idea what that means.
I'll take that one, Andrew. Okay, so apologies, I do try and do a jargon check, but this is a particularly challenging area. Essentially, we have a standard called the Public Sector Network, which is a national government standard, accreditation standard for IT that enables us to connect to government data sources such as DWP. That is as you can imagine, that's a very stringent standard to meet in order to handle that data. Essentially, there is talk of that being replaced by this new Cyber Essentials Plus or Future Networks for Government standard. So what we're trying to reflect there is that we will meet whichever standard is the standard that's required for us to meet. But obviously those standards are different and will require different efforts and challenges to meet. So the team is confident that they can meet the public sector, the PSN standard, because we've been doing it for a number of years and worked that through. The new standards, obviously, is a different regime and a different assessment, and so we'll have to probably do additional work to the new standard, which is why we've perfected it in mitigating action. But until the decision is made whether PSN is the future or not, we're unable to start that work.
So GDS stands for?
Yeah, now you've exhausted my technical limits on it, I'm afraid.
Perhaps we could have an explanation next time.
Yeah.
Government issues.
Okay, Peter?
Oh, thank you.
Chair. Well, a few, I'm afraid. Number 2, corporate governance. There have been some recent examples where decisions, which should have been key decisions, were made and then evolved back. The one about disciplines is the most recent one, but it's happened before. So it doesn't sound like in terms of corporate governance we're on top of these things. Like, the question, I guess, is whose responsibility is it to point out to exec members or other members that what we're trying to do is actually a key decision and needs to be gone through a particular governance process? Is it officers who should be throwing this out, or do the council? Where does that lie? Where does the responsibility for that lie? And I'm guessing in terms of internal audit, are you keeping an eye on decisions to make sure that they are following the due process?
Okay, so Andrew and then Catherine.
Well, to answer the specific question, myself as monitoring officer, I'm responsible for making sure that the constitution is complied with appropriately. I absolutely take the point about the one that you specifically referred to, and there was one that I'm aware of last year. Again, not to underplay either of those two, that's in the context of scores and scores of key decisions through the process, but it's something that I'm certainly looking at and making sure that we're as tight as we possibly can be, so the proper decision making takes place, whether that's by executive or by officers or by council itself.
Okay, sorry, Catherine.
Yeah, to just come back on that. And obviously, as you said, there's lots of decisions taking place. You can't possibly be all over them. So I'm assuming it's been delegated down to the directors of the particular departments, so they keep an eye on what's going on in their patch and raise things to be key decisions.
Yeah, I agree. It's a collective effort, and certainly the directors are the key components of that effort, making sure that we do get that decision making correct. But as I say, I'm confident that we've got safeguards in place to make sure that we don't have any similar situations like that in the future.
Okay, Catherine, did you want to come in on that?
I'm just going to say, we do have corporate governance in our audit plan for the year, so obviously there are quite a number of aspects of corporate governance we could look at, but there are specific ones we can sort of scope our work to incorporate that area.
Key decisions would be good. Chair, I have another item on list number 9. According to this, but this was on target. So this is the climate emergency action plan. So the recent progress report showed that even by 2030 we will still be churning out 204,000 tonnes of CO2 equivalent. So we went to got to carbon zero, and we're looking at offsetting strategies for that very large amount of carbon. The progress report didn't show much progress towards the rest of the carbon footprint of the park. So in my mind, this is never been on target, and the risk would be much more amber or even red.
Yeah, I've got a question on this as well, so I may as well chime in at this point. I mean, I think in terms of Peter's point, it perhaps comes back to the wording of the risk, which is the risk being that the council is the borough is unable to meet its carbon reduction aspirations. So does that mean it's unable to meet what is planned in the plan, or does that mean that it's unable to become carbon neutral? It's still a bit vague. I think the other point to make is what has actually happened since this report was published. I understand a key part of the plan is electric vehicles, and obviously we have had a shift in terms of government policy since presumably this was all written. So presumably again, that change in terms of the sales of petrol and diesel cars, that pushback to, after 2030, will again change the risk level in this, because that's a big chunk of the plan, isn't it? So quite a few things to pick up there on that.
I think that what we need to do is take that away in terms of the points that you're making, because I think there are bigger aspects here in terms of obviously the decisions that central government have made, and actually have clarity around the objective that we're seeking to greater clarity, so that we can ensure that the risk, you can be clear about actually what we actually need. I think we just need to take it away. So obviously I get the points that you make.
I have an additional item here. So at the very bottom, it talks about development and adaptation planning to adapt operations and infrastructure to climate impact. So that's not in the original climate emergency action plan. In mind, this is scope 3. So the original climate emergency action plan was to get the borough to carbon zero. It wasn't to carry out adaptation in order to cope with climate change. For me, that's a different program of work with a different budget, different delivery. So be concerned with scope 3.
Okay, I'm just going to come in here a question on the elections, the new risk on elections. So obviously, a big task ahead. But one of the mitigating actions is resource planning. I wonder if you could expand a bit more on that, Andrew, in terms of what that's going to look like, and I guess particularly if there are any, you've got a big undertaking, if there are any sort of single points of failure in terms of staffing, if there are, what's the kind of risk mitigation around that as well?
Well, resource planning is always an issue for elections. It is different next year because of the magnitude of elections. Potentially the 2nd of May could have a parliamentary election, police and crime commissioner election, and for all amounts of elections as well. But I've already been to the corporate leadership team, and it's very much on the corporate leadership team's agenda now that we need to focus on this as a key issue. We've had our first meeting last week of our corporate project delivery team, so this is colleagues from right across the council, including HR, who are supporting us in terms of looking at our own staffing resources and the availability, making sure we've got our own staff available for the electoral events, but also working with partners, looking at the broader community in terms of where we can harness resources from. So I think, again, without being complacent, at this stage in the electoral cycle, I'm confident that we will be able to mitigate that risk appropriately. But I think it's right that from the council's perspective, because of what I perhaps call the perfect storm of elections coming along, that this is promoted onto the corporate risk register, and this committee has some oversight as to the plans and mitigations that are taking place over the next few months.
Thank you. That's you.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I was going to ask about this one as well, so just to follow up on that. I'm pleased with what you said, Andrew, recognising exactly what you were saying. This could be a perfect storm with sort of 3 significant elections. Probably the worst scenario you could imagine on coming together on one day with the changes, the sheer quantity of elections, and your second parliamentary candidate elections going on as well. What I wanted to just suggest was, and this may be inappropriate, was that if you feel that you're not getting the support that you feel you need from the corporate leadership team, or you need from executive members, because maybe they don't recognise fully the challenge, maybe you can feel free to come back to us as an audit committee to identify this, albeit maybe through the whistleblower or something, just to make sure that because you personally carry a lot of responsibility for this, obviously, as well as the council widely. And I just want to make sure that you are given the full support that you need, and if anything does go wrong, that you're not then scapegoated and it's handled poorly. We want success. We've got a good track record of success in elections here, and I've got that big confidence in you, but you do need that real team support and a lot of resource involved to deliver this well. So look, that was my invitation, was to come back if you feel you're not getting the support you need, I guess. If that's appropriate, I don't know if these are not, but
You said it, so it's probably on record now.
Well, I mean, I do appreciate the advice oversight of the Audit Committee in terms of how that risk is being managed and ideas that you may have as a committee in terms of any gaps that you might spot. As I say, at this point in time, I've had some really positive support from the Chief Executive, from directors, from colleagues right across the council. So it doesn't feel, it's not the biggest risk, put it that way at the moment, the resource planning in terms of the elections project overall. But I will come back to the committee if I need to.
Okay, Mike?
Risk number 17, mainstream education provision. Top right hand corner says there's been no change in the assessment of the risk. And all the mitigating actions are on track, one of which is to be completed in September 23. I'm quite surprised there's been no movement in where we actually are compared to the target, when all the mitigation actions are on track.
My sort of looking at this, reading of this, is because they're not yet completed.
Oh,
I know they're on track, but they're not yet. Well, I know that we've got a strategy in place, but there is still future.
I wouldn't expect anything to be suddenly a massive click change in it, but I'm just kind of surprised there's been no change in the assessment where the risk is. Yeah, one action ends in 2 days' time, the other action ends in 2 months' time. So one is a third year out. So we expected something to be happening, or some comment as to why is all suddenly magically going to bring you back on target.
I think we can take it back for sure, based on what you're saying. I think that this is in school places and ensuring that we've got the right level of school places is something which absolutely we need to continue to be on top of, and there are external factors that affect it. So as we've talked about here in the introduction, that we've had new arrivals from Hong Kong and with Ukrainian children. So it's something that can change, we can fluctuate this particular risk where you have external factors. So, but I will take it away anyway. You can speak to Paul, I'm sure, will speak to the team about it.
It's probably just to make another observation. I mean, one of the existing controls of forest school become co-ed. That's great, it creates more places for girls in that particular area of the borough. But I've no doubt that lots of people will not like the idea of forest school becoming co-ed. Lots of residents lots of residents would like more single-sex schools for girls. Which isn't necessarily in the right number of places.
The school going co-ed will help enormously with the school places, and the feedback I'm getting is pretty positive back co-ed, to be honest.
You do draw attention to the too few places for girls. My understanding of that was it was particularly the massive oversubscription of Holt School as an example of desire for more single-sex school, particularly for girls in the borough.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
A very small administrative area. There are lots of two-letter initials like overs, etc., which are not in your key abbreviations. So I don't know if UK is, or sorry, EZ or DEK and Z. So if you could just update the key abbreviations, I don't use it on this.
We will do that, yeah, thank you. I'll just pick up on the local plan update list. In the mitigating actions, we've got the Reg 19 point, it says November 23, and it says on track with the lowest risk on 1. And I can't see what that's referring to. It's probably new things. Is that?
It's got cut off in in the way the paper's been presented. So it's been cut off in the way the paper's been presented. I'll send that to the committee afterwards if that's.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, in terms of the timelines, they are still on track as presented.
Yes, it's if I recollect correctly, off the top of my head, is that there is a government consultation going on that may have an impact on that timeline. But that timeline, as described, is the one that we're working to currently, so we are aware of any changes that may.
Okay, thank you. I think we've come to the end of the questions on that one, so thank you very much for your responses. Okay, the next item is the annual governance statement update on action. So is that for you?
Committee. So, as you'll recall, back in June, we presented the annual governance statement to the committee, and this is an update of the actions that we've taken in relation to those. So there were 10 areas identified in the annual governance statement where we had the opportunity to strengthen our governance, and essentially this is an update reporting on the progress that we've made. So we've made good progress in a number of areas in terms of that, particularly around the constitution review. We've got a project team working through the Council's Constitution Review Working Group. That work is underway and commencing. Obviously that's a significant task given the size of the Constitution. We're making good progress on the community vision, engaging with our partners, and that remains on track. There's been some excellent work in terms of reviewing the capital programme, the attention that that's got. You've received an update on the position on the accounts today. In terms of member development, we're slightly behind in terms of moving towards the LGA Charter for member development, but we're looking at, obviously, we've also talked about the elections in 2024, where there will have elections, and we'll have our cohort members for 2 years. So we've shifted our focus of effort to making sure that member development process works for 2024, 2025. And in terms of the rest of the actions, I think we're making strong progress on those. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions from members? Peter?
Just on the Constitution, Anthony, one, there's an action from June with my name against it about Constitution, about how things that are passed by a majority in the council are handled under the Constitution, because it's silent on motions that are passed, and that was indicated that it had been taken to the Constitution review. Has that formed part of any agenda so far for the Constitution review?
It was in the update that was circulated to members a few days ago, so that particular point has been logged, and it will be form part of that constitution review. So we've explicitly got those points, and we'll make sure they're picked up.
Yeah, Michael?
I don't know the detail, I'm afraid, but just as a general point, when you form some of these reviews, whether it's over the Constitution or workforce organisation programme, is simplification one of your key objectives?
For the Constitution, I can speak to that is yes, very much.
My favourite phrase is keep it simple. You know, I'm all for simplicity and also plain English. You know, I think people should be able to pick up documents and be able to just read them. So that's just a point that it's really important to me that we keep things as simple as we can.
We're all for that. Great.
Any other questions or comments on this item? No? Okay, thank you very much for the update. So that leaves us with the forward programme. Any comments from members on the forward programme? I did notice we've got the annual government statement in the November meeting as well, is that, no?
No,
I was going to say,
we brought that
we
forward
brought
to
that, so
reduce
that
congestion.
can come off, yeah. Any other comments on the?
I think
Yeah.
we raised this time last year, and some of our diaries get very booked a year or two ahead. As soon as possible, if we could have dates for 2024, that would be very useful.
Yeah, Mike?
In the explanation, we're going back to the previous item on F2, on page 130. So there are 8 actions due to be implemented by the end of September. Verbal update and you will provide the meeting. I'm not sure they're verbal update.
Yeah, so that's community minutes.
Right.
Sorry,
Oh, that's for March 24, isn't it?
Graham.
oh, sorry, Graham, you cut, yeah.
I can provide a verbal update, if helpful.
Yes, please.
So, Andrew can feedback on 2 of the activities in terms of assurance on the register of interest and the internal audit feedback into the risk management approach. Of the items, the first one was around training. With the training, we pulled the finance training into a corporate management programme that's been set up through HR. So we expect to have e-learning in place by November and the face-to-face training, specific training by the end of December. At the moment, on-the-job financial training that business partners deliver continues. Staff qualifications, keeping a record of those is another action. We now have that, we have it manually at the moment, obviously it's working with HR, how to put that onto our learning management system, so that's a more formal approach. Further action was the review of our financial resilience, which is really critical at the moment. We engaged a company called LG Improve, who provide a working tool that goes for resilience. The real good bit around that is most forms are done on RRA forms, so they're forms that we provide annually around our estimates and our outturn. The LG Improve actually works off of council's accounts, so it works off the balance sheet, etc. We've had our first feedback and presentation on our position. We've fed that back, so we're now going through the iteration to make sure we fully understand it, and that will be embedded in the CFO letter in January next year, which will be part of the NTFP process. That's very positive. Beefing up job descriptions. We started that on a rolling programme. So as jobs are going out, there's I think a director, assistant director in children's. We've beefed up the finance responsibilities in the job descriptions. They'll continue then to be rolled out as posts are renewed or roles change. The asset management plan, it's not progressed quite as much as we had hoped initially, partly because of progress with the local plan and tying it into our own asset review, including the use of our own corporate buildings such as Shoot End. So the approach now will be to have a new plan in place, taking into account both those factors by the end of March 24. And finally, about an improvement plan monitoring process, i.e. how we manage that these matters are moving forward, and that's in place on a monthly basis with officers across the organisation, and obviously the update here is part of that. We've just been able to report on that progress. So hopefully it gives you comfort that those matters are moving forward, and hopefully we need further reassurance around the financial position.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Graham, that's helpful. I also noticed, so at the November meeting, we've got the SIP Code of Practice update, that's financial as well, isn't it? Which is what I was trying to say earlier, but yeah, no, that's good to have that update now. Any other comments on the forward programme?
Related to that last item on the annual government statement, can I suggest that we bring back the Audit Committee's effectiveness for February? And would it be beneficial to the committee to bring back the outcome of the knowledge and skills survey for the committee, and what suggested actions we could take?
Yeah, so I guess we can't fit that into the November meeting. Well, look, perhaps we'll have a discussion about it. Yeah, it'd be good to not to leave that in too long.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I'll close the meeting there. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.